3 unsettling encounters, 3 different lives, all haunted by one chilling truth. Something was there, and it was never supposed to be. If you are new to this channel and enjoy scary true stories like these, help this channel grow by subscribing and turning on notifications. Every subscription helps us bring you more real horror stories that keep you up at night. Don't just listen, be part of the darkness. Thank you for your support. I've never thought of myself as paranoid. Cautious, maybe, but not paranoid. I've always been the type of person who keeps her head down, sticks to her routine, and minds her own business. I live alone, work a standard 9 to 5, and mostly spend my free time reading or cooking. A boring life, maybe, but I like it that way. Safe, predictable. About 6 months ago, I moved into a new apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. It was a small, older building, only 2 stories, with maybe 10 units in total. Nothing fancy, but it was affordable and quiet, and most of the other tenants seemed to be older, retirees, or young couples who kept to themselves. The kind of place where everyone nods politely, but doesn't pry. At first, everything was fine. I was relieved to have finally moved out of my old place, downtown. That neighborhood had gotten noisy and a little sketchy, especially at night. This new area felt suburban, even though it technically wasn't. More space, more trees, fewer people. The only downside was that there wasn't much nearby, especially not within walking distance. But I didn't mind the drive to work, and the solitude suited me. That all changed about 3 months ago. It started subtly. I began to notice little things, the kind of stuff you'd usually brush off. My mail had clearly been opened, just a tear at the corner, like someone had tried to peek inside without making it obvious. A few packages went missing, even though the delivery app said they'd been left on my doorstep. I chalked it up to porch pirates and started having everything sent to my office instead. Then there were the noises. Late at night, I'd hear shuffling outside my window. Not footsteps exactly, more like someone dragging their feet. The first few times, I figured it was just someone walking their dog or taking out the trash, but it kept happening, and always after midnight. I started keeping my blinds closed and double-checking the locks on all the windows. One night, I heard a light tapping on the glass, so faint that I wasn't even sure if it was real. I didn't look. I just sat frozen on my couch, staring at the dark screen of the TV. After a while, it stopped, but the next morning, I found smudges, fingerprints, on the outside of my living room window. They weren't mine. That was the first time I called the police. They sent an officer to do a drive-by, but by then, there was nothing to see. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone lurking around. The officer was polite, but clearly skeptical. I could tell he thought I was just a lonely woman getting spooked by harmless noises. I wanted to believe that too. So I tried to shake it off, went about my business, went to work, cooked dinner, watched my shows, fell asleep to true crime podcasts like usual. Then came the voice. It happened on a Sunday night. I'd just come back from visiting my sister and was unloading groceries from my car. It was late, around 9 p.m., and the parking lot was almost empty. As I closed my trunk and turned to walk to my apartment, I heard someone say my name. Not yell it, not whisper it, just say it, calm and clear. Emily. I stopped in my tracks, looked around. There was no one there, at least, no one I could see, but someone had definitely said it. And the weirdest part, the part that still makes my skin crawl, was that it wasn't a question. It wasn't like, Emily. It was like they knew me, like they were just acknowledging me, the way you would if you bumped into an old friend at the store. I didn't even move for a few seconds. Then I turned and walked fast back to my apartment. I didn't run. I didn't want to look like prey, but the whole time, I had that prickly feeling on the back of my neck, like I was being watched. Once I was inside, I locked the door, pulled all the blinds, and checked every room. Everything looked fine, but I couldn't shake that voice, the calmness of it, the familiarity. The next day, I asked the property manager if the building had any security cameras. He said no, unfortunately, but offered to walk the property and check for signs of trespassers. I appreciated it, but it didn't help. Whoever was messing with me wasn't sloppy. They weren't trying to break in or steal. They were just letting me know they were there. I started parking on the street instead of in the lot, started varying my schedule, taking different routes to and from work. I even switched my bedroom to the smaller room in the back of the apartment so no one could see me from the front windows. I kept the lights off at night, sat in the dark with my phone in hand, just in case, and still, it kept escalating. About 2 weeks later, I found a photo slipped under my front door. It was a picture of me, taken from behind. As I walked to my car, it wasn't blurry or rushed. It was centered, framed, like a professional headshot, but of my back. I don't know when it was taken. It could have been that morning, or a week earlier. That uncertainty was the worst part. I went back to the police, showed them the photo. This time, they took it more seriously. They asked if I had any exes who might be holding a grudge. I didn't. My last relationship had ended over a year ago, and he lived in another state. Besides, this felt different. Not emotional, not angry, just calculated. They filed a report and said they'd increase patrols in the area, but they also warned me that unless someone actually tried to break in or hurt me, there wasn't much they could do. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat by the back window with a kitchen knife in my lap, just listening, and around 3 a.m., I heard it again. My name, Emily. Same tone, same calm voice. This time, it came from the backyard. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just slowly reached for my phone and started dialing 911. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and stay inside. Officers were on their way. I crept toward the back window, careful not to make any noise, and peeked through the slats of the blinds. I saw a figure standing just beyond the tree line, at the edge of the property, not moving, just watching. Even from that distance, I could tell he was tall, wearing dark clothes, face completely in shadow, and then he turned around and walked away, slowly, like he wasn't in any hurry. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone again. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, just silence and trees. After that night, I didn't go back. I packed a bag, called out of work, and went to stay with my sister. I didn't even cancel my lease. I just left. She thought I was being dramatic, until I showed her the photo. Then she stopped asking questions. We installed a Ring camera outside her house. We checked every window, every door, and for a while things were calm, until last week. My sister was at work, and I was home alone, watching TV. I had paused the show to grab a drink from the kitchen, when I heard the motion alert from the camera. Someone was at the door. I checked the feed, and saw a man in a hoodie, standing on the porch, not doing anything, not knocking, just standing there, head tilted slightly, like he was listening. He stood there for 6 minutes. Then he stepped forward, leaned close to the camera, and smiled. I couldn't see his full face, but I recognized that smile. It was the same curve of the lips I had seen on the edges of that photo. The same calm, casual grin of someone who doesn't need to rush. Someone who knows exactly what he's doing. I called the police again. They reviewed the footage, told me they'd keep an eye on it. But again, there was no law being broken. Just a guy on a public porch, watching. I don't know what he wants. I don't know how long he's been following me, or how he even knew my name. But I do know this. I'm not imagining it. This isn't paranoia. Someone chose me. For whatever reason, someone decided that I was the one they'd watch. And the worst part, I have a feeling they're not done yet. I used to work at a family-owned grocery store just outside of Tulsa. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those small-town places that's been around forever, the kind where people still write checks and the cashiers know the regulars by name. I started there in my early 20s, mainly just to make rent and keep busy after moving back home. At first, it felt temporary, but a year slipped by, and then another, and somehow I'd become one of the senior employees without even realizing it. The store itself was old, the kind of old where the floorboards creaked and the cooler fans hummed like dying machines. There was a walk-in freezer in the back, a dingy little break room with an ancient microwave, and a narrow storage room that everyone hated going into because it was always freezing cold, even in the summer. That storage room is where this all started. I remember the first time I noticed something strange. It was during a closing shift, probably around 10 p.m. The store had emptied out, and I was going through the nightly routine, stocking shelves, sweeping up, checking the inventory list. I walked into the storage room to grab more paper towels and immediately felt that drop in temperature, like I always did. But this time, there was something else. A smell. It was faint, but off, like damp wood and old meat. Not quite rotten, but heading there. I chalked it up to the busted ventilation back there. I didn't think much of it until I turned to leave and noticed a box of cereal toppled over on the shelf, like it had been pushed. No one else had been in there. I'd just restocked that shelf earlier. The box was on its side, and there were 3 long scratch marks down the cardboard. I stared at it for a good few seconds before picking it up and putting it back, telling myself, maybe it just fell. But from that point on, the storage room never felt right. Over the next few weeks, it became more than just a chill. Sometimes I'd walk in and feel this presence, like someone was standing just behind me. Other times, I'd hear what sounded like whispering coming from the far end, where the older dry goods were stacked. It was always too low to make out, like a conversation happening through a wall. I didn't say anything to my coworkers at first. I didn't want to sound paranoid. But then one day, Marcus, a high school kid who helped out part-time, came into the break room, looking pale. He told me he was in the storage room, putting away cleaning supplies when he thought he saw someone standing at the back, just beyond the shelves. He blinked, and it was gone. I didn't tell him I'd been having similar experiences. I just nodded and said something about shadows and bad lighting. But it got worse. I started dreaming about the room, always the same layout, same flickering light, same feeling of being watched. In the dream, I'd be standing in the middle of the room, unable to move, while someone or something watched me from behind the shelves. I never saw a face, just a dark silhouette, crouched low and still. I'd always wake up sweating, heart racing. One night, after a double shift, I had to finish up inventory. Everyone else had gone home. I hated being alone in that store after dark. The place just felt wrong, too still, like something was waiting. I went into the storage room with my clipboard, telling myself it would only take 10 minutes. I made it 5 steps in when I heard it, a dragging sound, like something heavy scraping across the concrete floor. It stopped as soon as I froze. I stood there, holding my breath, and slowly turned my head. There was nothing, just stacks of toilet paper and canned goods. I backed out of the room and slammed the door. I didn't go back in there that night. The next day, I came in early and casually asked my manager if anyone had ever mentioned weird things happening in the store. He looked at me like he knew exactly what I meant. He didn't answer right away, just sipped his coffee and stared at the floor for a moment. Then he said, "I don't like going back there either." That was all he said. He wouldn't elaborate. I later found out that the store had been built on the foundation of an old warehouse that burned down sometime in the 1950s. 3 workers had died in the fire, trapped inside a back room that supposedly lined up with where our storage room now sat. I don't know if that's true or just small town legend, but after hearing that, I started paying closer attention to the details. Sometimes I'd find things moved, pallets shifted, a stepladder knocked over. Once I found a row of soup cans stacked in a perfect pyramid in the middle of the room. No one admitted to doing it. The cameras didn't help either. We had one pointed at the storage room entrance, but every time I checked the footage, it would glitch during the exact moments something weird happened. Static, skips, even black frames, like someone had cut the tape. They just replaced the camera. The same thing kept happening. One night, I caught a glimpse of something that still haunts me. It was close to closing again, and I was walking past the storage room when I saw movement through the tiny glass window on the door. I froze, expecting to see a coworker, but it wasn't anyone I recognized. There was a man standing in the corner, facing the wall. He was wearing what looked like old dirty work clothes. The fabric was scorched and torn in places. I couldn't see his face, just the back of his head and his hands, which hung limply at his sides. His skin looked gray. I stood there, paralyzed, and then he turned slightly, like he sensed me watching. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, engine running, hands shaking. After that, I refused to close alone. I made sure someone was always with me during night shifts. I told my manager I was done with storage duty. He didn't argue. Eventually I quit. I had to. It wasn't worth the fear, the constant dread. I started having panic attacks every time I stepped foot near that room. A few months later, I bumped into Marcus again. He told me the store had started hiring new people to cover late shifts. One of them, a college student, had apparently gone missing after locking up one night. Police said his car was still in the lot. His phone was found behind the register. The only place they couldn't account for was the storage room. The door had been unlocked. They never found him. Sometimes, I still dream about that man in the corner, standing silently, facing the wall, and every time I wake up, I swear, I can still smell that faint, awful scent of damp wood and old meat, like he's still following me. I live alone, in a small house, just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's a quiet neighborhood, with decent neighbors, and not much going on. The kind of place where you recognize the same dog walkers every morning, and wave at the mailman, because you've seen him for the last 6 years. I'm a quiet guy, work from home graphic designer, pretty solitary, and honestly, I like it that way. I'm not antisocial, but I've never really felt the need to have a full social calendar. I'm telling you this so you understand why. What happened still doesn't sit right with me. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't just a creepy moment. Something was wrong. Something still is. This started last fall. Late October. We'd had a stretch of cold, rainy days. You know that kind of cold where everything feels wet, even inside your bones. I'd been working late on a freelance project for a brewery's holiday campaign, and my sleep schedule was all messed up. Around 1 a.m., I decided to get out of the house for a walk to reset my head. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside. It was drizzling. Not enough to need an umbrella, but enough to hear that faint tapping on the leaves. There aren't many streetlights on my block, just one at the corner that casts this sort of dull yellow glow. Everything else was dark. About halfway through my usual loop, I noticed something weird. Up ahead, at the far end of the sidewalk, under the glow of that one streetlight, there was a man. He was standing completely still, and he was wearing this old yellow raincoat, not the modern kind. It looked vintage, shiny, rubbery, the kind fishermen wear. He had the hood up, but I could tell his face was angled toward me. I didn't think much of it at first. It's public property. People are allowed to stand around if they want. I kept walking, but I was aware of him. As I got closer, maybe 20 feet away, I slowed a bit, because something felt wrong. The guy wasn't moving, not shifting weight, not checking his phone, nothing, just perfectly still. Even his hands were at his sides. I crossed the street. When I passed the corner, I glanced back casually, and he was still facing the direction I came from. I walked home faster than usual. I kept thinking maybe I imagined it, that I was just spooked by the late hour and the weather. But later that night, just as I was about to go to bed, I walked past the front window and saw him again. Same yellow coat, same still posture, standing halfway down the block, right under the streetlight, just watching. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day I checked my security camera footage, but my front cam didn't reach far enough to get a clear shot of the sidewalk. Just some movement, a blur, hard to make out in the dark, and rain. I told myself it was probably a neighbor, someone new, maybe staying with a relative. That happens around here sometimes. I didn't see the man again for 3 nights, but then, during another late night walk, this time around 11, he was back. Same place, same posture, only this time, I was ready. I stopped halfway down the block, pulled out my phone, and aimed it at him. I snapped a few pictures, but they didn't come out well. Too dark, too blurry. When I looked back up, he was gone. I don't mean I blinked, and he was gone. I mean I was literally looking at my screen for maybe 5 seconds, tops, and he just wasn't there anymore. That chilled me. I rushed home, checked all the doors, shut the blinds, and stayed up all night again. I started carrying pepper spray, and a flashlight, and a knife I kept clipped to my belt. Maybe overkill, maybe not. Depends on who you ask. The next time I saw him, I was in my backyard. It was around 9:30 at night. I just stepped outside for a smoke. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the row of tall hedges at the back of my property. That's when I saw him. He was standing at the edge of the hedge line, just barely visible between 2 bushes. I only saw him because of how the porch light hit the reflective yellow of his coat. Again, not moving, just standing, facing me. I froze, and then I yelled. I didn't even think. I just shouted, "Hey, who the hell are you?" No response. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen, ran back outside, but he was gone. There was no sound, no rustling, just gone. The next day I filed a report with the police. They took it seriously, which I appreciated. 2 officers even came out that night and did a sweep of the area, but they didn't find anything. No footprints, no evidence of someone passing through. One of them suggested maybe it was a prank, kids trying to mess with me. I'm not a paranoid person, but I know what I saw, and this guy wasn't a kid. He was tall, maybe 6'3", and broad-shouldered. He moved like he was sure of where he was going, not like a scared teen in a raincoat. That was the night I started locking my bedroom door while I slept. About a week went by with no sightings, and then one night, while brushing my teeth, I glanced toward the bathroom window and felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. There was condensation on the glass, like someone had breathed on it. From the outside, it hadn't rained that night. It wasn't humid, but there, in the middle of the glass, was a clear smudge, as if someone had pressed their nose to it. I rushed outside barefoot, but again, no one. I installed motion sensor lights and another camera in the backyard the next day. A few days later, I checked the footage, and I found something. Around 3:12 a.m., the backyard cam recorded motion. The footage showed a figure, wearing a yellow raincoat, walking along the edge of my fence. He stops, looks directly at the camera, and then turns and walks into the woods. That clip is burned into my memory. It gets worse. A friend from high school, Sam, messaged me after I posted a vague status about strange activity near my house. He told me his cousin had gone through something eerily similar, seeing a man in a yellow raincoat standing outside their house, always watching, never approaching. That cousin had gone missing 3 months ago, vanished without a trace. The only thing found at the scene was a torn piece of yellow vinyl fabric caught in the fence. I wish I were making this up. I've since moved. I packed up and left within 2 weeks after that conversation.